somebody were to ask me a question just right off the bat, do you think, Rolonda, that black women and white women can really be good friends? My answer automatically, without question, absolutely, absolutely. That's just my experience. Maybe it's because some of my longest, deepest friendships have been with women, black and white, but a lot of white women as well. Maybe it's because when I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, my family was the only black family in the neighborhood. Maybe it's because when I went to my prep school, I was only black, not just in class, in the entire school. But I didn't feel the racial prejudice. I made very, very dear, deep friendships that I still keep to this day. And they're not all black folks. I have some good white folk friends too. But then there's some folks who will say, now wait a minute, Rolonda, snap out of it. The reality is, as adults, few women are really close friends with women of another race. Now, that may be hard for some of us to swallow, but some say it's reality. I mean, many black women complain that white women have special privileges over them. At least that's what Linda Tatum, a psychologist from Los Angeles, California, says. And Barbara Septis, a student at Tufts University in Boston, she agrees. Both of these women agree that white women have more privileges in society today. And that's what's causing a lot of problems, you think, between black women and white women. Linda, why do you feel that way? Because that hurts me to hear that. You don't think
it hurts me too, Rolonda, you know, but I'm reporting my life experience personally as well as with clients who come into my office. And you grew up in a world where you didn't feel the racial prejudice. And the one thing I want to say before I get started is that I don't say that being black or being white is better or worse or should have any special privileges attached to it one way or the other. But I do believe that we are in fact different.
How do you think, or what do you see are the major differences that might keep us from being close as friends?
Well, you know, I think that most people feel most comfortable talking about really close personal issues with other people who've had similar experiences to the ones that they've had. Because you can value somebody else's opinion maybe who's been through it the same way you have and has had the same kind of background. And I think that people are, again, I'm not saying that I'm happy that it's this way, but I feel that people are more comfortable with people who look like they look, who dress like they look, who listen to the same music, eat the same food, do the same things they do. It is boring. But we're talking about,
No, I think what you're forgetting is here's understanding also, because somebody has to understand things the way you understand them, and that's going to be a level where you come to with a white friend. Not that white friends and black friends don't understand each other. When it comes to race matters, there's a level that you will separate. You will not understand the same things. You'll view things differently. The understanding you have, you'll start to become a different level, and that's what I think. That's what the main problem is.
But doesn't that breed good understanding, good conversation, good debate that brings people closer by understanding the differences?
Just like you want common grounds when you walk, like I say, if we all walk into a room full of men, as women, we will automatically relate to each other. If I walk into a room with a whole bunch of white people, if I see the first person I see, if it's a black male, I will automatically relate. I want somebody to talk about the differences, but there comes a point where you need to talk about things that are similar, where you need the understanding, and that's where, I mean, I'm not saying you can't be friends, but I think when push comes to shove, your relationships are going to break apart.
Linda, I agree with everything Barbara's saying, because that's what I'm saying too. I think that absolutely black ladies and white ladies can be friends, but when push comes to shove, it really gets down to when you're talking about the intimate details and wanting someone to really be able to get inside you and give advice or to commiserate with your pain. I think it has a lot to do with early indoctrination. Now, I don't know what it was like growing up in your house, Ro. I can tell you that, you know, a lot of black people that I know tell me that as a child, they were raised and told in the house, you know what? White folk don't understand us. We're different than white folk. Black folks stay together. White folks stay together. Latinos stay together. Italians stay together. Jews stay together. Catholics stay together. And that's just kind of...
My mother and father were very clear. Well, I mean, y'all, and understand that this whole conversation is going to be about our different experiences. My parents just happened to say, be very proud of your heritage. Know that your people made tremendous contributions to this country, but get out there and be American. Meet the world, and you will be richer than we could ever give you in this house.
Certainly, I agree. That's how it should be.
Yeah. Go on, introduce yourself. We have another panel. Let me go on.
What I want to say, I mean, I don't think that in black households people talked at all about segregation because we spent so much time talking about integration. In the 60s, I think that what ends up happening is that when the pedal hits the metal, white will out in terms of friendships. In other words, I have very close white friends, but I've had very close white friends who I thought were among my best friends who have said things to me that showed how ingrained their racism was in them. I had a friend that I had to put out on the Golden Gate Bridge one time who told me, oh, she crossed the line. She told me she did not believe that Tawana Brawley could have been raped by a white man. Now, Doing, what do you mean you don't believe that this could have happened? I said, why not? And before she could answer, I just pulled over and said, yo, girlfriend, call me when you get to the other side of the bridge. I was just curious. I mean,
Let me bring some more folks into this conversation. I want you to welcome race relations expert Dr. Robin Smith, Patricia Ireland, the president of the National Organization for Women, and Dr. Julian Malveaux there, who you just heard, a syndicated columnist. Let me go back, though, to Linda. Linda, give me an example of two different conversations that you think, or a conversation that you think that black women have that you could not be a part of. Let's say you go to lunch.
Okay. Well, I would say that going to lunch, the conversations normally are quite surface kinds of conversations. What I thought we were really getting at here is not, can we be social friends? Can we go out and have a great time together? Of course. When I'm interpreting as can they be really good friends is talking about really getting down to soul issues. And again, what a white person particularly would talk about that would be different, I can't say. The only thing I can say is that I again feel that in my case, for instance, in the circles that I travel, there are very few black people. Now, is that because I do that intentionally? No, it isn't. Mm-hmm. I'm from Los Angeles, and my son goes to a privileged school, and I say privilege has nothing to do with race. It has to do with the fact it's a private school, it's not a public school, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity, but he doesn't have very many black children there, so that his playmates are not. I haven't done that intentionally. It's just that that's how it's worked out.
You know, Linda, it was funny because when we were interviewing you before the show, some of the things that came out in your interview, we were just kind of like surprised by your being a relationship therapist. One of the things that you had said was that you felt that there was a difference in the conversation that black women and white women would have. You feel that black women would have conversations about ghettos and drugs and guns, and white women would not. That was part of your interview.
No,
so I just want to know, did you really say that?
No,
As I said
think it's been misinterpreted.
She said it.
I said that I think. Were you there?
I'd been there, done that, heard you before.
Okay. Rolonda, I think what I was saying, and that quote came out of something. I'm not saying that anybody made it up, but it was taken out of context.
Okay.
And that is when I was asked what problems particularly might be different between races. Certainly there are, those kinds of problems prevalent in all across the boards. But I do feel that again, you're asking me, I was invited to come on the show to talk about my life experience. Okay, my life experience also has been that of a minority in that I'm Jewish. I grew up in a school where I was one of the only Jewish people there, and I remember when I was married and moved up to Northern California, I was introduced to people that my husband worked for, and I was told I was the first Jew that they'd ever met, and like I was some kind of a witch. And so it's like being a minority is something that I understand and I empathize with, and I'm not saying that one thing is better or worse. I just think they're different.
Okay, we want to get back because Robin is a race relations specialist and Patricia Ireland for the National Organization of Women. I'd like to know how you pull women together of varying backgrounds to not only build friendships, but to support issues as well. Up next, also, a young biracial woman tells us why assumptions can be so dangerous. She says she identifies herself as a black woman. Now, let's find out what her white mother has to say about that. Stay with us right after this. And I want to hear from the audience, too. You guys are really getting involved here.
I suffer from race, class, and gender inequality. I wear a crown of knowledge because I'm a conscious queen. My mask is one of happiness, but my history here is full of misery, done deliberately. I am America's true Statue of Liberty.
Welcome back, everybody. We're asking the burning question today. Can black women and white women really be friends? We just heard from Linda and Barbara, who both argue that black and white women cannot be friends, and you say it's because of such differences that you bring to the table. Linda, one of the things that we were talking about before was I don't know if it was misquoted of you, but the idea was, at least from what we got before the show today through your interview, was that you thought that black women and white women have different conversations, say over lunch. And one of your quotes was that black women talk about drugs and ghettos and guns and things, and white women talk about something different. Can you clarify that statement and see?
Yes, I think we just discussed on the break what actually was said, and it was that I believe that black women really do feel like they're playing catch-up ball a lot, and that it's very important to them to be positive role images for their children. And it certainly is for white women as well, but I feel that white privilege does exist, and I feel for that reason a lot of the issues that the white women are sitting around talking about at lunch are much more surface issues and probably not involved with the same kinds of things.
Do you agree?
There's a false superiority here when someone says that they think that black women are playing catch-up ball. Believe me, in my heart of hearts, there is nothing that woman has that anybody like me needs to catch up with.
I agree too.
Me personally, it's the lack of ignorance, because see, ignorance is something that if you don't go correct it and seek for the knowledge of it, you'll never know the difference. See, black folks were never raised up racism. We didn't discuss you don't like white people at our dinner tables. We were taught that when you sit together, we're all God's children. God created all of us, number one.
May I ask
number
you a question?
Two is that your morals and your values that your parents raised you up with was the way you believe. Ours is the way we believe. If you were a psychologist or study sociology, you would understand the study of each individual. We are all individuals, and if you took sociology or any social
you would see the differences.
You would understand.
God may have created us equal, but society certainly doesn't treat us equal. I think that's one of the things we have to talk about. If you have gone to school and you've never gone to school with a black person, wherever you live, the housing is segregated because of racism. You haven't lived next door to a person of color. Where you're working, I don't know what level you're working on, whether it's middle management or it isn't top management, because very few women get to top management levels. But whatever level you're working on, you probably are not associating with a person of color.
Well, I would say that I would answer the question in the affirmative. But realistically, we live in a racist society. And just as this woman said, we're segregated in schools, we're segregated in housing, we're segregated wherever we go. And that consequently, not only don't we have the scientific knowledge and the understanding of other people, it's not only a lack of understanding of black people, but a lack of understanding of other people.
Of people, period. Robin, you deal with race relations.
And then, so that you don't have
Let's get Robin in here, okay?
Okay.
So you don't have your basic understanding of people differences anyway, is what I basically hear you saying. What do you say, Robin?
I'll tell you something, Rolonda. One of the thoughts I have about, as I'm listening to all the dialogue, is this. That part of what's required for us to heal is that our denial be broken. And America in general, and we as people, are really in denial. And so as Linda's speaking about privilege, part of the issue is not only her experience, but it's really about in what ways is she carrying, and do many of us carry denial about privilege, about how people got it, and are we willing to give up some of our privilege to begin to redistribute it with other people? And that is very frightening when we start to think, it's fine like on a political way, maybe I'll share, but when it comes down to, do I want to give up some of the safety I think I have? Do I want to start giving some of my money to what might make this privilege more fairly distributed? We really find ourselves getting greedy and
Patricia,
hoarding.
I see you shaking your head here.
Well, I think there's some very interesting points that she's raising, and among them, when I think about the relations among men and women, or between men and women, some people perceive that being treated equally or fairly or with justice is going to be a step down for them. And that is something that we have to be willing to give up as white people, and that men have to be willing to give up as men, I think ultimately it's better for all of us, for the whole society. But as I was listening to the conversation and thinking about friendships, which is where we started, I think that I, for instance, can be better friends with people who are politically committed to making those changes, and that's irrespective of race. I would have put that woman out on the bridge.
Linda, a question for you.
Would you let your son play with a black child? And if your son was old and dating and he brought home a black girl, would you let him date her and accept her?
Absolutely. In fact, one of my daughters goes to Georgetown, or graduated from Georgetown, and had a lot of very close friends who were black. Now, one of the things that I would like to say here is, again, I was invited to this show not to talk about how I feel, but to report what I am experiencing. I also believe that we are all one, that we are all God's children, and it pains me. The report that I'm giving is not one that makes me comfortable. This is not one that I applaud. I am telling you from my heart.
Do you feel privilege, certain privileges when you go out, that people treat you? Let's say if you were to go out with a young lady next to you, do you find that people will cater to you more than the black woman you may be sitting with?
Do I find that? I can't tell you that I do find that.
Yes,
I don't.
The real issue is this: whether she found it or not, the kind of white women that I'm friends with are the kinds who, when they find it, stop it. When I'll give you an interesting example. My assistant went to cash a check recently at a tennis shoe place, and they wouldn't cash a check. It was for me. They know me, but with whatever, didn't have the ID. A young white woman stopped her and said, "Wait a minute. They just cashed my check. They have to cash your check." She stepped out of her comfort zone and said, "Just a minute, that's not fair." And the kind of white women that I can be friends with, because I can be friends with some, I think Patricia said it well. If you're committed to eliminating racial injustice, if you put your butt on the line for me, we can be friends. But when you sit up on this ivory tower of, I'm privileged, I'm privileged, I'm privileged, I mean, I want to look for, I just don't know.
Let me take a quick break here. I appreciate what you're saying, because you're about to meet two of my very, very best friends who just happen to be white. And one of the things that we do with each other is we allow each other a comfort zone to ask difficult questions about each other's culture, so we don't go out in the street and make a stupid assumption or come across as prejudice when we don't mean to. We're going to share some of our more personal moments, and we're going to find out how we've been able to remain friends without ever letting race get in the way. I know lots of questions coming up. We'll continue the debate right after this. What's your question?
Hey, are you enjoying this episode of Rolonda? If so, please hit the subscribe button and let me know. Leave your comments, and also follow me in other forms of social media at Rolonda Watts. Remember, that's ROLONDA, Rolonda Watts, on all forms of social media. And if you're interested in voice acting, my goodness, let me help you. This is a new year coming. It could be a new you, a new career. Check out my voice acting masterclass at Rolonda.com, ROLONDA.com, and I'll tell you all about it. Let's get back to the show. And if you're interested in being a voice actor, why don't you sign up for my free webinars and find out all about it? Just go to Rolonda.com, ROLONDA.com, and push the button to sign up for my free webinar. So come on, let's get you prepared for maybe a brand new career in this brand new year. Check it out, Rolonda.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Some interesting debate going on here on the Rolonda Show today. If you're just joining us, we're asking the question, can black women and white women really be good friends? We've got some varying opinions here. And let me bring in some new folks here. I want you to meet Jessica Care Moore. She's a poet from New York City. And her mom, welcome. You've got some fans over there. I also want you to meet her mom, Irene, who is from Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, you can clap for mom, too. Jessica says that she identifies herself as a black woman, although her mother is white and her father is African American. Before we talk to Jessica, I want you to take a look at Jessica in action. Look at her stick here.
What the liberated woman gotta do? Place my name in wet cement. Every month I pay the rent. Put my silhouette on a stamp. I'm not a hoe, slut, or a tramp. My children aren't on crack, and either am I. I want to see the words gold strong black woman when the good year blimp flies by.
I've got to ask you this question. You say that people make an awful lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
An awful lot of assumptions.
Yeah, they make a lot of assumptions. Black people make assumptions if you're biracial, that you're confused, that you walk around and, you know, because especially with black men that I've dealt with, they're like very surprised that I'm like, I'm a black woman. What are you talking about? And because I'm politically astute, and because I'm active in the community, not just because I'm of color, I actually do something about it. And so that it surprises them, because they guess they're involved with a lot of biracial people, supposedly, who are just walking around going, I don't know what I am. I'm white and black, boxed, you know.
Sometimes our images of biracial people, even if we don't know, we see on TV, we hear people talk about, I'm biracial, and you come out and you say, I'm black.
I'm a black woman. And the thing is, I grew up, and it was wonderful that my mother's here, because people always ask me, because my work is so race conscious, a lot of it is, they go, well, what does your mother think?
What does mom think? She just cut you out of her life. She just said black.
It really surprises me when I'm asked that, but Jessica has a God-given talent. She has a way with words that's remarkable, and she's used that talent to enhance her beliefs, and I can't imagine not supporting her, and I've supported her all along the way.
Let's hear your words in the answer of, do you think that black women and white women can really be good friends?
I think I can be friends with anyone who isn't ignorant. You know what I mean? It's like I can't be friends with some black folks because they can't get down with the things that I can get down with.
Right.
So it depends on the mental ability. You know, and just like she said, if someone is actually down to get in the trenches with me, then you're okay. You got my back, then you have my back. Right. You know, I've grown up. I had white friends and black friends. I went to all white Catholic schools, and I went to all black Detroit public high schools. So I had both friends. You know, growing up. And but I have found that my white friends have trickled off. You know, I saw that there's something that said I didn't lose white friends after I did the Apollo, but my white friends have drifted down as I've gotten older because I'm more involved with more serious issues. It's more because they're not really involved with it, and it doesn't matter to them. The things that matter to me don't matter as much to them, and it's probably not to my mother. The things that matter to me may not matter as much to her. They matter to her because I'm her daughter, not because she has to deal with them. She deals with them because I'm dealing with them.
What do you say over here at the microphone?
First, I want to address Linda.
Yes.
Okay, I think it goes a little ways back because when I look around the audience here, I see mixed people in here, okay? Definitely. And I don't think it comes from the younger people. I think it's something that's embedded from years ago. And women, whether we like to say it or not, has always been the dominant figure. Okay, women in the past could tell their husband what to do, what not to do, and I don't think. Yes.
He says that's something all women have in common.
All women have that. For those of you women, if the women here don't have that, then you're in trouble.
Okay, so the point that you're trying to make
my point is, I don't think that it's really going to become 100%, because I think that when black women look back in the past, and even today when they see the way their sons, their daughters, their husbands, their families are being treated, okay, that brings about the problem. And I admire what the lady in the back said. You know, when we sat around the table, and I'm also from North Carolina as well.
Good man.
And thank you. Never had that problem, came from a large family as well. Never have my family sat around and talked about racism. Never have my family sat around and talked about white people. We always talked about things that would put my family ahead.
Yeah. And I think that is generally in most black families, that racism isn't usually something that we teach our culture because we've been victims of it so much. We teach equality, that you're just as good as the next kid who's sitting next to you. You're not better. And I think that's something that is in general. Yes, Linda.
Rolonda, I just wanted to go back to a comment that this young lady just made about at the end of what you were saying, you were talking about the fact how as you've grown older, you seem to have drifted more toward the black community, and that you seem to now discuss more serious issues where the white community doesn't seem quite as involved in those serious issues. Is what she's more eloquent than I am. and I make my living communicating. But that's exactly what I was trying to say. When we sit down to lunch, it seems that there are serious conversations and there are fluff. And the white women that I know are wanting to talk about fluff. There are more important things to talk about.
White women
You may got that right. You may got that right.
Let me take a quick break. I'll be right back, and I'm going to bring two of my very best friends out here who just happen to be white. And some of my best friends are white. You know that? We'll talk with them and get them in the mix in just a minute. We'll continue right up here. As we continue our debate today, can black women and white women really be friends? I know we got a little fire going here. Julian, what did you want to say to Linda?
You know, racism is everybody's problem, Linda. It is untenable in a multicultural society for you to put yourself in this privileged tower and to assume that it's not your problem because you live where there are no black people, you send your son to school where there are no black people. You know, Los Angeles is going to be majority minority. Where you live is going to be majority minority, and you could put your head in the sand and pretend it's not going to be that way and say, oh, I just don't know any black people. That is unrealistic, and it's going to come back and bite you in the butt.
Excuse me. When did I ever say I thought it wasn't my problem? I think it's a huge problem, which is the only reason that I said I'd sit up here on this stage and get blasted like this, because I'm reporting. I'm not telling you how I feel. I'm telling you how it is out there.
Linda, with your body language and with everything else, you are telling us how you feel. Do y'all know how she feels? Come on. You are telling us that you are above this, and that you are telling us that no one travels in your circles. You are telling us what you think about this topic. You may be unconscious about that, and I don't want to pretend I'm clairvoyant. I'm very talented, but I'm not clairvoyant. However, I think you're sending out vibes that are readable by anyone with 2 ounces of good common sense. People are shaking their heads because it's absolutely the case.
But is anybody here in defense of Linda?
Rolonda, one of the issues I think we really also need to look at that really is surfacing for us here is that everyone loses when you don't embrace difference. And one of the things we were just talking about is, you know what keeps us separate? Fear and insecurity. That's the real issue, that we're scared of difference.
But part of the thing we're also scared of, I believe, is the very inevitable conflict that arises when we start talking about things that really do matter to us, when we feel we're misinterpreted or when we read someone's body language one way or another. There is invariably, when we have at least enough trust to be honest with each other, it's going to feel like more conflict initially. And that, I think, you have to be willing to trust and commit to a relationship.
I tell you, 2 women who have my back more than folks who are connected with me in blood are Caprice Benedetti up there and Roberta Katz, 2 of my oldest, dearest friends. Let me tell you something. If a bullet was coming, either one of these women would jump out and stop it. That is how close these women are to me. Believe me. Believe me. These are my sister women. These are my sister women. And sometimes when we're talking, we forget we're so different. Robin, remember that conversation Roberta and I had one time? I was asking you stuff about being Jewish, and teach me that, because I hear everybody else saying this about Jews. Can you just tell me? And we share those things. Go on, y'all make your own comments.
I think that what Ro is saying is very important. I think we have a real choice in life. We can choose to look for our similarities and what we have in common. And then we can find evidence to prove that we have a great deal in common, or we can begin with the premise that we are different, and then we can go on a hunt for our differences, and we can prove that yes, indeed, we are very different. And it's how you look at the world. It's not to begin to say that we don't have any differences, but let's begin by what we have in common. Let's look for those things that we have in common. That's where we begin our dialogue, and dialogue is the most important piece. That's our bridge. That's how we get from similarities to differences. And in differences lie the real richness of friendships. What Ro is saying is that she sits at my table and eats bagels and lox. I make her chopped liver.
Hey, listen, I can even say this. The whole mushbucha. Because she said, if you're going to say it, get the
Right. We practice the sound. Now, I go to her house, and she teaches me to eat barbecue and other assorted things that I had never been exposed to.
Wait. You forgot the fried chicken.
And the fried chicken.
She makes only fried chicken.
That's right. But
And Caprice is making sauce.
Soft shell crabs. Go on. Obviously, we share eating together.
And it's one wonderful way, and I know in one of the earlier segments, somebody talked about sitting down at the table in their home, and I think that's a wonderful way. Sit down at the table. What a great way to start sharing cultures, and how rich that is. If you only ate fried chicken, and I only ate bagels and lox, our life would be much slimmer and less colorful for it.
That's right, and I would be a lot thinner.
Wouldn't have to go work out.
But I think that probably with us, if there was a big difference, it would be that I'm from the South and you're from the North.
Absolutely.
That's more different than our race differences, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that Ro and I are both kind of colorblind. Everything sort of looks like shades of human to us. Yeah. And that's really just the way we experience the world, and I'm not quite sure why that is, but it is so for both of us.
But you know what, one thing I would just say about that.
I understand your point about being colorblind and just seeing the world as human. But what happens when you see the world as human and the world is pushing color in your face? Yeah. What happens then?
Or what happens if you see the world as human and you discount the history and the culture and how that has an impact on people's lives?
I think what Barbara's saying is you don't even have to go into history to see the woundedness. And I think part of, as I'm listening to you, and it makes sense that you have this wonderful friendship and connection, but I'll tell you how that conversation could injure African American people. What they'd say is she doesn't get that we got really hurt. And so even in marriages, when people are trying to repair relationships, one of the first things that must happen is ownership of the injury. Ownership of the woundedness. And then we can look at where we're similar and really rise above it. But when you come to wounded people, when you go to let's get out of color for a minute. You go to a battered woman and her husband comes back to her and says, you know, I feel so connected to you. I love you deeply, but she's been battered and slapped and bruised. You know what she wants to hear? Not about how much he loves her. She wants to hear him address the way he wounded her.
That's right.
And then his word means something.
That's right. You know, it's interesting. When I went to that all-girls high school, this was a high school founded back in the 1700s, and I was the only black in the whole high school. During that time, Roots had come out. You know, it was a big epic, and we all related as young girls to Kizzy. And at the end, something horrible happened to Kizzy, and the slavery thing was going on, and Roots was running every night, and it was a big deal. And I'll never forget when we were watching the show together, because it was part of our U.S. history class. Everybody was crying, and then finally one little girl turned to me and she said, Rolonda, was it really like that?
Yes.
And I said, honey, that's only what they can show you in primetime television. And I pointed out that in Virginia, where you're from, they still have auctioning blocks as part of the tourism trade. And over here, where you're from, did you know? And they didn't know. I learned the most important lesson of my life there, that people aren't always racist with malicious intent.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they just don't know any better. As we say down south, or maybe North Carolina, they just hadn't come round to themselves yet. But you know, but that's part of growing and learning, and hopefully build. That's why those friendships are so tough.
And part of the grace we need to offer people, but you can't offer grace when people are denying it and saying, I don't understand what you're so upset about. We need to say, you know what, you make so much sense to me.
And see, her point about denial is so incredibly important at this time. I live in Washington, and you walk through the malls in Washington, D.C., there is nothing that speaks to, from, and of black people at all. You've got Vietnam Veterans Memorial, you've got the Lincoln, you've got the Jefferson. We were slaves. There would be no United States of America if we had not donated, involuntarily, of course, all that free labor.
And a black man laid out the way the streets are laid out in the nation's capital, all those things.
But
I got to take a quick break. When we come back, and Caprice, I want you to tell that story about the time you were dating that black man and what that black woman said to you, but we'll be right back in a minute. Coming up next, we're going to meet a woman who claims that many white women have only a token black friend just so they can relieve their liberal white guilt. Well, Caprice and Roberta, I'm going to let you get a shot back on that one, too. Am I a token? We'll be right back in a minute. about whether black women and white women can really be good friends. We've been talking to two of my closest friends, Caprice and Roberta, about our friendship. And Caprice, why do you think that we never think about race when we talk to each other, unless we're asking specific questions? We talk about food all the time, and men all the time, and clothes and all those things, but not race.
You know, it's never been an issue. I mean, I think the way I was raised also was very, very open-minded, very, very liberal. My mom had just a multitude of friends that were constantly coming in and out of the house. I mean, I had my grandparents, great-grandparents, her black friends, her white friends, her Asian friends, her Indian friends, everything. So growing up like that, it just wasn't, you know, unusual. It was the norm to me. Most of my friends are black. Most of my friends are white. They're very diverse. The minute I met Ro, we just became friends instantaneously. It was like
Valentine's
Day.
It
was like Valentine's Day.
Over fried chicken.
Fried chicken and chocolate cake. And we just automatically bonded with one another, and it was a real sincere, deep friendship. I mean, I look up to her like an older sister, which I don't have. And she's taught me so much, as well as another friend of mine who's by the name of Jason Wood. He's my roommate and one of my best friends of 6 years, who happens to be black. And he's from Alexandria, Virginia, and that's how I met Rolonda. And sitting at the table with Roberta and my other friends and Ro and Jason, they've taught me so much. I said, you know, what's it like? What's it like being out there not being able to get a cab?
You know what got me? I just remembered this. It just hit me in the head. Do you remember the day something happened? Something happened to your doorman who was black.
Yeah.
It was when some big news event had happened, and he had gotten the brunt of it because he just happened to be black. And Caprice called me in tears. I'll never forget. It just hit me. I wish I could remember the whole story. But you called me in tears saying, this is so unfair. And I had to say, Caprice, this is life in America for a black man.
Yeah,
and this is something you have to understand. And I think a lot of our friendship has been in understanding the world around us, which makes our friendship so tremendously unique.
Absolutely.
I think to some extent, I grew up in a town in Indiana of 20,000 people that was 100% segregated. I mean, I went to segregated schools, I grew up in a segregated town, and to some extent, I've had to almost trick myself to learn the things that I've learned. And when I became president of NOW, as a real quick example, I was invited to take part in the Martin Luther King celebration in Atlanta. You can see from the photograph of the front line of the march how excited I was to be there with, you know, the heroes. I mean, Coretta Scott King and Reverend Jackson and Andrew Young. And the headline, the subtitle says, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, Andrew Young, Ambassador, unidentified white woman. Reverend Jesse Jackson.
White woman has done a lot of work with NOW. But her predecessors.
Let her finish your point. Okay, make a little point, and then I get to come
back.
Don't you even
take praise graciously?
No.
You know, her predecessors and now, the things that we're talking about in terms of personal relationships really do boil over to the political, because the more important issue for me than the personal anecdotes and all this is how we transform our country into a just country. And Patricia Ireland has been at NOW one of the people who has gone on the line for civil rights issues, who's gone on the line for black issues, who's fought for affirmative action. I mean, she really is the kind of white woman I could be friends with.
Go on, Patricia, make your point. But I think from that experience, Julianne, part of what I learned was in the women's movement, for instance, how invisible African American women have been. How many times do I hear that the women's movement, the feminist movement, is white middle class? Where does that leave you? You know, where does that leave Coretta Scott King? Where does that leave Addie Wyatt from the Union of the Auto Workers? You know, where does it leave Shirley Chisholm? It's like,
well, that's why we've had to form our own organization.
Excuse me, but I think that's what I was trying to say when I said that I feel that black women feel like they're playing catch-up ball. Because they have
not playing catch-up ball. If nothing else, do you learn? I mean, I said that catch-up ball was offensive terminology that dealt with your innate false sense of superiority. Here you come with catch-up ball again. We are not playing catch-up ball.
Excuse me.
And the reason that, what happened in 1984 with NOW is that the National Political Congress of Black Women was formed. We found that the white women's political organizations didn't have room for us. It wasn't catch-up ball. It said, we play ball so well that we will write the rules.
And we'll be right back in a minute. We'll be right back. Many folks, many of our kids are heading off to college, meeting new people, opening their eyes. We're going to talk to two new teenage roommates. They just moved in together last week. One black woman, one white woman. They say they get along great. Is their relationship doomed to fail after this week? We're going to help them keep that friendship on track right after this. And I promise you I'm going to get that. I promise.
Hey, are you enjoying this episode of Rolonda? If so, please hit the subscribe button and let me know. Leave your comments and also follow me in other forms of social media at Rolonda Watts. Remember, that's ROLONDA, Rolonda Watts on all forms of social media. And if you're interested in voice acting, my goodness, let me help you. This is a new year coming. It could be a new you, a new career. Check out my voice acting masterclass at Rolonda.com, ROLONDA.com, and I'll tell you all about it. Let's get back to the show. And if you're interested in being a voice actor, why don't you sign up for my free webinars and find out all about it? Just go to Rolonda.com, ROLONDA.com, and push the button to sign up for my free webinar. So come on, let's get you prepared for maybe a brand new career in this brand new year. Check it out, Rolonda.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
And I know better. This 19-year-old man has a point to make. Go on.
I just want to make a comment. I'm Italian, and I was growing up, with Italian family and everything, and I was never really around black people. But I realized, as I went to school and I've conversed with them, I've learned to grow with them and understand them. And I just want to say that you're being very ignorant, and you're making me look bad by the way you're acting. Because, one more thing, just because I've known a lot of white people that I particularly do not like, and a lot of black people that I do like.
You.
Because
People
they're
are
two different
people.
people. It's not the color, it's the attitude of the person.
I agree with you.
What do you say over here, sir? What do you say?
I like to say this. I'm listening to what you women say, but the reality is, in New York, in the Bronx, not all the Bronx, northern part of the Bronx, they have full-grown men who insult not only black women, Hispanic women, Arab women. It's always something derogatory. If they ain't yelling and screaming about the Nazis, the Ku Klux Klan, or the skinheads, or how they're glad the black churches got burned down. See, so I believe we people can be friends, but racially, we have to still understand it's racist and it's violence, okay? And everything doesn't take place down south. And the black woman in particular has to redefine herself, whether it's her hair, whether it's her whole manner of being. And I also like to say this, with all due respect, blackness is a state of mind, as you see the sister up there. But some of us, and I'm not ashamed to say it, will still call you a mulatto.
That's an old slave term in Egypt.
Whatever.
Something.
I have nothing against you.
Yeah, it's a slave term that they use. I mean, during the Jim Crow
Throw down with Webster
area,
Dictionary.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's an old term that we should
I know
really
what you're
get
saying,
rid
but
of,
I don't control Webster Dictionary. That's who
Right.
you have to get after.
No,
That's all I have to
I'm
say,
not
because other
fighting
people got to talk.
That's right. Caprice, tell us of that time. You actually dated a black guy, and you got some repercussions for that.
Yeah, it was a real shame. The gentleman that I was involved with, we had met in Paris, and we had a good 6-7 month relationship. And wonderful, wonderful man. His family's from Germany. He was half black, half white. We came to New York. He came a couple months later, and we started dating here. And business was going so well for him, we started walking down the streets arm in arm, and people really had a hard time with it. And I'm saying, God, this is 1991. Get over it. We're just like two good friends. The love and the affection was so intense, and it was genuine love for one another and care and concern. People walk down the street, and I'd hear it from whites, from blacks as well, from any other racial group. How could you do that? That's disgusting. Leave that behind closed doors. And I was like, wait a second here. This was really starting to affect our relationship. He started to distance himself from me quite a bit. And ultimately, it did break us up. Now, there was problems in our own relationship, but it made me ask you questions. What's the plight? Where do you stand? Why can't you walk down the street in 1999?
I remember you asking me, why do black women get so upset when they see me with this black man?
Heavy. I mean, violent.
Well, was he fine? He was gorgeous. And I said, but the story was, once again, about divided sisters. And you wrote a book about it, right? A book. Come on and introduce yourself here. Go on.
I'm Kathy Russell, and I wrote a book on divided sisters. Now, I want to say something, though. Your relationship with your two friends is genuine and deep, and you guys love each other enough to try and learn about each other's culture and respect each other. And I have to respect that. and they're not token friends. But I have a problem with Linda only because, and I don't know you that well, but as Julianne was talking about your body language, and that's all we can go on. And I have a problem when people have these kind of fly-by-night friendships. Now, you have yet to tell us. You keep saying, I'm here to tell you about what I see and not what I feel. Well, what do you feel, Linda?
What I feel.
Do you have a black friend?
Let her answer.
First of all, let me talk to you about my body language, okay? If I seem to be tense and apart, it's because I knew when I came on this show that I was going to say things that were going to be very unpopular. So my body language indicates that, okay? What I want to tell you is that the lady who's sitting in the back row who talked about us all being God's children is what I believe.
Okay, but
and I believe it from my heart.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you have a black friend?
Do I have
a real black friend?
No, I don't.
There you go.
Well, maybe there you go, and maybe there you don't go. I mean, you know, if you don't you go to make friends with people
You sat here and said that racism, you agreed that racism was everybody's problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, in order to eradicate racism or do something about this issue, you have to find a black friend, someone that you're genuinely interested in, and learn about black people. Just don't talk about...
Or you know something, I don't feel like I need... Let me tell you something.
Oh, wait, you don't feel like you need to do that?
Just a second. 2 months ago, I was in Mississippi, and I was there
She
to
saw
help...
some black people.
Go on,
No,
let Linda
I was
complete her
actually
thought.
there to help a boy who had had his eye put out when he was 9 years old. It took him 10 years to get this thing
How
to
old is
trial.
he? How old is
He's
this?
now 19 years
No,
old.
he's not a boy. First of all, he's a young man.
No, it
That's the
happened to
first-
him when he was a young boy, is what I
Okay.
said, when he was 9
All
years
right.
old. Now
Okay.
he's 19.
Okay.
There was a black and a white jury, a black and a white attorney, and they asked me to come down there and help them to work with this young man who was having trouble looking people in the eyes because he had a glass eye, because it had been put out in this accident. And I went down there for 2 weeks and I worked with this whole family. It wasn't like, tell me about yourselves, I need to get to know black people. This was a young boy who had been wronged, and I was there, and it didn't make any difference to me.
Linda, let me ask you this, because a lot of
There's
folks,
that boy again.
a lot of folks have been coming down on Linda, and a lot of people have been talking about it during the commercial break. And I just want to ask you, because sometimes we say things with our mouths because that's all we have to work with when our hearts may feel something different. And I'm just wondering if some of the things that you've said that you hear yourself, that maybe you need to work a little bit more on being a little bit more open. Do you feel that at all, or do you?
Well, what's really interesting to me, Ro, is that obviously that is the way I come across. And the truth of the matter is, if there's anyone who doesn't think it should be this way, it is me. I don't think it should be this way. I think we are all equal. I don't care what color anybody is. We all should be equal. My point that I'm trying to make is it isn't that way, and I'm sad about it.
Okay, Linda, then what are you doing? What are you doing about it? What are you doing to contribute to helping solve this issue? What are you doing?
Well, you know, obviously not as much as I should be.
Okay.
But you
So
know what?
that's
I'm
all I
also
would
not
ask of
doing
you,
anything
Linda.
to contribute to keeping it that way, because I don't think
No,
it's
no, no.
right.
When you're not doing anything, Linda, you are doing something to contribute to keeping it that way. All I ask is that you do something. That's all I ask is that you do something. You may not be as political as a Patricia Ireland, or you may never have the friendships that Ro has with these women, but do something. Doing nothing is actually doing something.
I agree with what you're saying, and I hear you, and I respect
We've
that.
got to take a break. We'll be right back in a minute. I want you to do something. Look what I found in the audience. Look up here. 2 college freshmen been in college 1 week. This is Sonia from New Jersey and Megan from Maryland, and they're currently studying at the Pratt Institute here in Brooklyn. Well, they've been roommates now for just over 1 week. And how y'all doing so far?
It's okay.
Okay.
Well, we just started, so we're still finding out, our differences and similarities, but it's working out okay now.
So there was a shock issue when you walked in the door and you said, "You're my roommate"? Did you have an instant feeling at all about the difference that you saw?
Well, not so much. I mean, we spoke on the phone before we met, but she, I've been around all blacks, like basically all my life. She's been around all whites basically all her life. But I mean, it's an experience. We can learn from each other also.
Yeah. So what are you thinking, Megan?
Well, I have had some black friends before, and then with having Sonia as a roommate, I've been able to talk to her about issues and feelings, and basically I really didn't look at the color, I looked at a friend.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Now listen, you know how it's hard living with folks. You're going to have a lot of issues, but you can be really, really good friends. Do you believe that black women and white women can really be good friends?
I do.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, I think one of the things it requires is a consciousness. I'm thinking about when you called Rolonda and said, what's going on when you were dating this guy? Why do all these black women, why are they so angry? And the naivete, how you were raised, that's rare. Many of us were not raised that way. Few of us were. And so I think what would be helpful is when someone's real angry with you and you can say, that really makes sense to me that black women are angry because they feel that I am taking someone who they could be with, or because of the way that white women have been idolized. And that's crushed our hearts as black women. See, we don't want to tell the truth about that. But if we're real honest, our hearts have been so hurt that how come they liked your hair more? And why'd they like your features?
So
and
as these two young ladies become women together, actually, what should they keep in mind so that they will be a good example for our next generation?
Ownership about what the struggle is really about, and a consciousness.
I was just going to say, I wrote a book called What Women Want, in part to tell each woman to figure out what she wants and take the next step, whatever it is, in getting it, going it out after it with everything that she possibly can. If you want to be friends, if you want to be roommates, you've got to work at it. You've got to take that next step. You've got to make yourself a little vulnerable. For some of us, maybe it starts by keeping a straight face when somebody tells something that they think is a joke, but it's racist. And just looking them in the eye and saying, gosh, maybe you could explain that to me. I don't see the humor. I mean, you get interesting reactions, but whatever the next step is that pushes just a little bit beyond your comfort level, that's the next step you've got
And
to take.
remember, it's okay to share the toothpaste every once in a while. We'll be right back in a minute. Some final notes. That's great. You have an exciting year.
True that, true that.
We've just been talking during the break. The lady says we're all mixed.
I want to say about friendship. Friendship is close to love. And friendship and love operate in the same way. They try to keep the world safe for both the people involved, or all the people involved. And the way to get past friendship even, or even toward friendship and toward love, is to struggle together for a more decent world, right?
Say anything you want, but I'd like to do that. Hey, just before we say goodbye, there are probably lots of us who are going out after this show who are going to run into other people or who are different, who might say, you know, I think I'm going to try to be a little better. Roberta, go on. You were saying some things to keep in mind.
I was listening to those college students, and for years I did multicultural training with college students. And what we really need to do, the heart of it, is to have the courage to talk about what's taboo and to really listen, to truly listen, so you know that the guy who became a great runner did it because he was being chased by white kids, or the girl who doesn't want to go into a store says that when I go into a store I get followed, and a white person doesn't understand what that experience is, or I get pulled over on the parkway more often than you do. We need to hear it. We need to truly learn to listen.
That's right, because what we always say is this may be a talk show, but the art is truly in listening. Thank you all for being with us. Have a good day.